Hello there, everybody. My name is Jacob Hyman. Some of you have met me. Maybe you're meeting me digitally for the first time. Well, hello. I am a civil engineer, and I am the leader of Towns Steubenville, the local conversation of strong towns within the Steubenville area. Strong Towns is a national media nonprofit dedicated to helping cities become strong through identifying really successful development types, um, identifying how our cities changed their development circa World War II, and how things like automobiles, zoning, and other aspects of our contemporary built environment affect the life that we have together. And I am joined by Patrick Brunner. I'll let him introduce himself, but right now, Steubenville is going through a very interesting housing project, revitalizing a lot of the public housing in the North End. And it's a process we've been in now for just over a year. And I've met Patrick a few times in the past and thought it would be good for us to sit down together to talk about what this project is. Um, yeah, just to help the community better understand what's happening in the North End and how is it different than other HUD projects we've had in the past. So Patrick, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, thanks, Jacob. It's nice to meet all of your friends here online and hopefully in person next week. So yeah, I'm Patrick Brunner. I am part of the planning coordination team for the Steubenville North Choice Neighborhoods Grant. Um, I have a connection to the Pittsburgh area. I lived in Pittsburgh from 2018 to 2022, working for an urban design firm there. My background is in architecture. I practice urban design and urban planning. I'm a certified planner. So I have a close connection to wanting to improve neighborhoods. Um, and I was born and raised in the Midwest, so it's nice to be kind of back in this part of the country.
Nice. Where are you based now?
I'm based in the Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Okay, very good. Well, yeah, as was mentioned, you're here on the planning side of this Choice Neighborhood Grant. Um, what exactly is this Choice Neighborhood Grant? How did our city get into it, and how long have we been in this? Who's behind it?
Sure. Yeah, so the Choice Neighborhood grants are they were released in 2009, so they've now been part of three different administrations. And they are grants that are aimed at transforming and uplifting neighborhoods where there are public housing sites that need need some love and attention. Um, the city of Steubenville, along with JMHA, Jefferson Metropolitan Housing Authority, jointly applied for this grant in 2022. They were awarded it in December, right before the end of the year, and they are planning on wrapping it up and at the end of 2025. So it's a 2-year planning process. It's roughly $500,000.
Okay. Wow. What is the goal of this grant? It's housing related, and we've discussed that it's affecting the North End. It's a joint project between the city and the county housing authority, and $500,000 right now. That's not enough to build right now. We're not at the building stages, right?
Right. Right. We're planning for the future. So this money is going towards the planning, not the construction of new housing or anything like that. Um, I hate to sound overly simplistic, but the goal of the grant really is pretty straightforward. It's about uplifting and improving the lives of those that live at Elmer White, JFK, and in the North End itself. It's really about improving their access to those things that help make their lives better. There is a kind of a defined planning area that's from the Ohio River to the hillside, and then from the north side, it's University Avenue, and on the south end, it's Washington. So it's the
Hmm.
area just immediately north of downtown.
Hmm.
Um, it differs quite a bit from HUD grants in the past. Um, it's the next generation of the Hope Six program, but it's a little bit different from Hope Six because Hope Six was strictly about rebuilding public housing. A choice is partially that, but it's more holistic. It's about the people and the neighborhood, not just the public housing itself.
Hmm.
Uh, and it has three pillars. So it has people, neighborhood, and housing. Every time you hear about the grant, you might hear about something falling into one of those three buckets or kind of tiers. So I like to describe it as uh, the people element is the software, right? It's the programs that go on your computer. It's job access, it's education, it's employment, it's those kinds of things, health and wellness, safety. The neighborhood and the housing are it's the hardware, it's the physical elements, it's improved lighting and sidewalks and trails and parks and things like that. And of course, housing is literally building new housing, but those are the kind of elements we're planning for in the future.
Hmm. Now, this is getting into the minutia of federal housing policy, but you referenced the Hope Six. Um, from your research of working on this project, I don't know off the top of my head, but do you know when the JFK Apartments and Elmer White were built?
Yeah, I think they're built in about 1960. Might be a few years off there.
So that was that Hope? Was that or is Hope something later in that?
The Hope was the 90s. I'm not sure when it started. I think it was the 90s and early 2000s, but
Mhm.
this was these both of these um, sites were built quite a bit before Hope 6 even.
Okay. So can you describe then? So this wasn't Hope. These were things built in the 1960s, and still, even though it wasn't the Hope policy, it was more just focused strictly on the housing aspect.
Right.
How do we generate public housing, and not really focused on much else? Can you describe the type of neighborhood that the CNG Choice Neighborhood Grant is trying to create, and even describing some of the characteristics of a choice neighborhood, and how it differs from what we currently have built at JFK and Elmer White, and also even referencing, and I know you've worked on choice projects in the past, maybe referencing some things you've worked on or things that you're looking at across the nation to try to replicate here in Steubenville.
Sure. Yeah. And well, as you alluded to, it is fundamentally different from even the lens of public housing 30 years ago, let alone 60, 70, 80 years ago. Um, because it's about integrating into a neighborhood. It's mixed income, it's mixed use, it's walkable. There's a diversity of housing types, a diversity of people. Um, it's it's not about just trying to put as many units as you can somewhere. It's about trying to build the whole environment where people can thrive. And I think the two major examples that come to mind that are regional, right across the river, in Pittsburgh, Larimer Heights is a good example of one um, that was completed or is really in its final stage of being completed. And then Poindexter Village on the east side of downtown Columbus, Ohio, about 2 hours away. That one's a little bit older. I think that was 2014. But both of those are really good examples that you can go and walk around and see the kind of the actual tangible results of what's happened.
Mhm. Those are neat. I know you went to Pittsburgh. Was it, I think, later last year in 23? You took a group of people over to Pittsburgh to see that development you spoke about. So
Mhm.
I know that we've had some people in the community who have actually been to that development and could talk about what they saw in a good way. I'm
Yeah.
interested in talking about some of the challenges that you see with projects like this, as I know it's the experience of a lot of citizens who don't live in public housing, um, but who are active members of their community, that historically public housing can feel like an imposition. It's a federal level entity, right? An imposition from the top coming down and pasting public housing into your city. And what this can leave the community feeling is that less this is a neighborhood that's a part of our town, but it's the projects, right? It's not an integrated part of our town. And what I sense with the Choice Neighborhood Grant, and even having seen and looked through some of the things that you've talked about, it really is trying to make it so that this is an integrated part of our town. And with that, what do you think are the challenges that it takes to actually make this project part of the town? What do you think?
Yeah. I like what you alluded to there too. It's the Choice Neighborhood Program. It's not the Choice Development Program.
Mhm.
Um, the word development kind of has the wrong connotations. It's just about building housing in a neighborhood. We had a few folks that went to Larimer and they came back and said it just looks like a neighborhood. That's exactly the whole point. It's not supposed to look distinct from, it's just supposed to look like the neighborhood. Yeah, I think the hardest part about this is it takes so much time. You need a lot of patience, and it's not going to happen overnight. It won't even happen over the period of a couple of years. It takes a really long range view of getting this accomplished, and it takes uh, elected officials that see it that way. It takes nonprofits that are committed long term. It takes residents that are patient too. I think that one of the major kind of things that makes this unique is that it's mixed income, which I mentioned earlier, but um, it gears towards all income ranges and it mixes them all together. And if there's a building with someone paying 30% of um, their income for the year for a unit versus a family paying market rate, all the units are the same. You can't tell the difference between the units and who's making what kind of money. So that's a huge part of it that's really healthy for neighborhoods. And it takes a long time to convince people, I think, that that's possible. But it really makes all the difference in the world.
Hmm.
And and to add to that too is um, what makes this a little bit unique is that um, private investment is needed. Um, After the planning grant process, you apply for an implementation grant. And the more private investment and public investment you bring together, the stronger your application is. So it takes everyone.
That's a really great segue into talking about the minutia of the planning grant. Because like you said, there's a whole I think over 2 years it's looking like section, which is purely planning, which then springboards into the potential actual development of this. But we're in that planning block right now. And as you mentioned at the beginning of this call, we're having this interview so that we can invite people to the community meeting that's happening
Yeah.
Tuesday, the 13th at 5 p.m. in the JFK Apartments. But you're going to be unveiling some of the concepts that your team has been working on for the actual redevelopment of the neighborhood area. But a lot has come before that over this past little over a year now. What's already been accomplished within this past year that's brought us to this point?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a year sometimes feels really long, sometimes it feels very short. Because we've done a lot of outreach over the past year. We put together about a 70, 80 question survey for residents that live at Elmer White and JFK. And we surveyed them and we had a really high response rate, actually one of the highest response rates I've seen anywhere in the country, which shows a high level of commitment, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
We've been talking to residents when we've been hosting community events and outreach sessions just to understand what people think is working in the neighborhood, what could be improved, and what opportunities exist. We formed a steering committee, and we've been checking in with them periodically every few months just to make sure that we're on track. And I think part of the exciting part too is planning can often be a little bit too nebulous. It's a little bit too, I don't know, documents that sit on a city's website for too many years and nothing ever comes of it. So part of that money goes to actually implementing some sort of project. So we've also been planning for the future of a vacant site. I think it's at the corner of Fifth and Franklin, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, and transforming that into an outdoor public space, almost like a mini park, a
Hmm.
place where elementary students can have a chance to kind of seize educational opportunities in a different environment. Um, People can come there, hang out with neighbors, maybe have impromptu birthday parties, community events, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
but recapturing the neighborhood as that third place, as a place where people can meet one another. So we've been working on that project too. And that's over $100,000 is dedicated to just building that project. So we want to show that something is possible. So that's what
That
we've been working on in year one.
that
But
$100,000 is part of that initial $500,000 pie you've said, right?
right,
Okay.
that's right. And we're going to be using the rest of the money for planning for all the materials that go into these community meetings. We've done a market analysis to understand what the demand is. We hired a professional firm to do that. We have community ambassadors. We've been providing them stipends, paying them for their time, which is critical.
Hmm.
So there's quite a lot of things that this money goes towards.
Okay. Yeah, all of that information, that market survey, I know is all on the Steubenville Choice website. Is it steubenvillechoice.com, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So that, talking about that, for the development stages, that private investment needed, the fact that you've already conducted a market study. What's personally exciting me about the prospect of this project is that not only is this going to be redeveloping the public housing we have in the North End, JFK and Elmer White's, to making them mixed income, to making them more part of the integrated neighborhood, but you are priming the downtown for housing redevelopment, especially, which whether or not the implementation dollars are awarded, and we hope they are, just that important development in our downtown of housing, so that people can more easily walk and bike to a lot of the revitalization work that's already happening in the downtown, is really exciting. So that this, even if you aren't a resident of public housing, there is a, overarching effects that will affect the downtown neighborhood area.
Yeah, and it's one city, right? So we may have delineated boundaries just for the purposes of awarding a HUD grant. You
Mhm.
know, the strength of downtown, the better the downtown is, the better Steubenville North is. The better Steubenville North is, the North End, the better downtown is. It's all, you know, um, a, a raising tide lifts all boats, right? So they're all working together.
Yeah. And working together now to the culmination of this community meeting that's happening this
Yes.
Tuesday, which is, you know, after meeting after meeting after meeting and meeting, we have some things that the community is actually going to be able to look at on
Yes.
Tuesday. What That's going to be at the JFK Apartments from 5 to 7 p.m. JFK Apartments is on 6th Street, and I don't know the exact address off the top of my head, but we can include that in the notes of this video. But what what's going to happen Tuesday night? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tuesday night, it's a lot of fun. Actually, we're finally going to unveil some housing plans we've been working on for the neighborhood. We've done a lot of listening. We've done a lot of talking to residents, right? We said, what are our development opportunities? What are the streets and corridors we should strengthen? What are the assets we should kind of latch this housing onto and support? So the three options that are going to be shared are going to be three totally different options because we're trying to cast a wide net because we want to hear what people like and what people don't like, so that we can start to narrow down on one preferred plan direction. But to do that, this is kind of the first time we're translating all of these meetings and conversations and surveys into kind of a drawing, into a series of drawings that people can actually come and provide their input on. And that'll be posted on the website as well.
Okay. And it's a 2 hour meeting,
Our
um,
meeting.
5 to 7, and I mean, it's going to be a party because it's also on Fat Tuesday. Got Mardi Gras that day. Um, what what what's really going to be worthwhile besides just the unveiling of the concepts, which will be posted online? What what's really going to be worth somebody's time for coming out for those 2 hours?
Yeah, if if you want to help shape what the future of your neighborhood should look like, the only way to do that is to come make your opinions and your thoughts known. You know, it's not a spectator sport. You got to come and share your feedback because it really does have an impact on what this plan will produce. And we want it to be a mirror of the community. So the more input we have, um, the better the plan will be in the end. Um, and the more support it'll have behind it. We want as many people to show up to say that we really like these elements of the plans, and this is the thing that's really valuable to us, because those comments get taken right into the next round of drawing this plan. It's really a direct link.
Hmm. Okay. That's encouraging. I'm looking forward to hearing what the response is from this on Tuesday. I hope
Me
you have
too.
a really good poll. I hope people listening to this make their way on out.
Yeah. There's free food and drinks too, so that
Oh,
never hurts.
good. So zooming out here now, um, we'll hopefully do some follow-up after the meeting to talk about some of those concepts. But it's beginning of February of 24 right now. And can you lay out can you blaze the trail for us going forward to the end of the implementation grant, and then,
Sure.
or pardon me, the transformation plan we're in right now, and then what has to happen in order for us to obtain those implementation dollars?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, this doesn't happen overnight. So, and as you mentioned, at the end of year one. So this plan takes 2 years to complete. So over the next year, we are going to work on writing this plan, taking all of these ideas from the neighborhood, and the housing plan and the neighborhood plan and the people plan. We're going to submit this to HUD about 11 months from now. So that's the end of 2024. The plan goes to HUD.
Okay.
Now, after that, there'll be an opportunity to apply for the implementation grant, the Choice Neighborhoods implementation grant. So that process takes maybe another 6 months, 8 months to write the application, and then takes them a few months to review them. So best case scenario, let's say in 2025, the city of Steubenville decides to apply for it, um, and they're awarded in 2026 maybe.
Mhm.
So that's when the 30 to 50 million dollars could be awarded to the city to pursue this housing and to pursue some of these projects. So, and usually it takes 5 to 7 years to build that housing. So what
Mhm.
did I say, 2026? So that would be if all things, go well, that would be the first time you might see construction.
Okay.
If so that's 2026 through the 2030s, right? So
Yep.
it's a long range plan. But I will say the implementation grant is competitive. So was this neighborhood grant, by the way. It was one of 9 that were chosen throughout the United States. So the city and JMHA had to work together to win this. So
Yep.
that was a big step. But the same thing needs to happen again in order to even win the implementation grant.
Yeah.
But we also want to write the plan in a way that you don't need to an implementation grant to
Mm.
see change. It's a lot easier for sure to have implementation dollars. It makes things a lot easier. There's no doubt about that. But as you mentioned, yeah, there are a lot of steps, and it takes a long time to see this happen.
Okay. I hope that um this will be blasted far and wide, but I know Steubenville City Council has been having active conversations about allocating money to secure the implementation grant, and not giving a dollar amount, but just for any of our city staff who might be listening, what are some tips that you'd give just over the air, in terms of how does a city, how could Steubenville posture itself to be in that competitive position so as to win?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, and really, it's about those city officials and the neighbors and neighborhood leaders, the nonprofits, sticking to a vision and following through with it, and
Mhm.
just recommitting themselves to it, and bringing in those partners, because the more partners you bring in, the more private investment you bring in, the more likely you are to win an implementation grant.
Mhm.
So sticking together and really being flexible too. You might have to change zoning. You might have to do all sorts of things in order to kind of change the future of Steubenville North. So it's not easy, and it just requires kind of teamwork, and to just stay the course, even though it might involve, you know, the changeover of a couple of mayors. It takes time. You've got to kind of commit to the vision.
Okay. Self-reflection and teamwork. Very difficult, but
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds really easy, right?
oh
That's it.
yeah. Um, I want to just tease out, you mentioned the partners. We've talked about that private and development um, match. And this isn't just purely matching or building new housing or building new developments. I know you've had meetings with like private entities. Can you address what do you mean when you say partners or those private entities who can help match that public investment?
Sure, that can be, I mean, it can be almost anyone, but just an example, like Franciscan University is a huge, right? They're a huge partner. I'm not in the neighborhood, but immediately adjacent to it. It can be nonprofits like Urban Ventures, uh, folks working on food insecurity. It can
Oh,
be
Urban Mission, you mean?
Urban Mission. I'm sorry, what did I say? Urban Ventures.
Yeah. I
Urban
used to
Mission.
work for the mission, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Right on.
Yeah.
It can be churches too, right? Churches can be part of this. It can be the Sycamore Center. It can be, um, I know education is not private, it's public, but Steubenville has some of the best public schools in the state of Ohio. That's a huge asset. And they have funds and they have, they have access to funds, I should say, as a public entity like that. So that's what I mean when I say partners. I'm sure there's dozens and dozens more.
Great. Well, that's good. We have an opportunity for everyone to come to this meeting Tuesday, February 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the JFK Apartments. I know, Patrick, you'll be there. The whole Collabo team will be there. So if you have any questions directly for Patrick, you'll be able to ask him, get some clarity on these things. And yeah, we'll hopefully come back again to talk about the plans that you've drawn up and the differences between them, and even some of the. I'd love to talk about the urban planning minutia of, in order to implement some of these aspects of a good built environment. Um, how is our city's laws and its codes currently configured, and how might they need to change? Helping hopefully something targeted at our city staff to help them see some of the things that they may need to be prepared to do in order to implement these plans. So, but do you have any concluding thoughts, Patrick, with that?
No, I just would encourage everyone to come to JFK on Tuesday night to come share your feedback because we really want to hear it. We really need to hear it. So we're looking forward to meeting all of you.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for taking this time out of your day, listening wherever you are, to us talk about a hopefully big change to the north end of Steubenville in helping to cooperate with all the organic growth and revitalization that we've already had. So thank you, Patrick, for taking your time. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jacob.
All right. Bye.